Hey guys, it's Ruben Furtado from the Furtado Group. I hope you guys are doing well, both from a health perspective as well as from a mental perspective, because there's so much that's going on in the world right now that should be affecting us in a negative way, and hopefully you guys are overcoming it as best as you possibly can. But today I did want to talk to you really quickly about something that surprised me when I started looking at some of the data in the real estate market. Now, it may surprise you, it may not. You guys be the judge of that. So when I look at this data, it's important to understand where it's coming from, right? Because I'm not going to generalize, I'm going to be very specific, but I do see these trends happening across multiple neighborhoods. But the neighborhood that I'm looking at in particularly is going to be Oakville, all right? So when we look at Oakville, and then we look at the time frame, well, what's the time frame? Well, I'm going to use where I believe what the pandemic kind of really started until now. And to me, that's going to be, it was in March 17th where the Ontario government declared a state of emergency and started shutting down businesses. So if you look at that period, that's 80 days. So now I'm looking at the data within the last 80 days during this pandemic. And then what I'm going to be looking at is what was the data like the previous 80 days before the pandemic, so really taking it to March 16th and going all the way to basically starting the beginning of, like, let's say, end of December. I think it was December 24th. So the same 80-day period. So let's look at that. So if you look at the data during the pandemic, we saw a total, I think it was 451 sales in all of Oakville, literally from March 17th till now. So the question is, how many sales were there the previous 80 days? And there was a total of 812 sales. So that's basically about only 56% of the sales that we had the previous 80 days before the pandemic, right? So that's a pretty big drop in terms of number of sales. But we don't want to just look at that, we want to look at within the segments. So if we look at, for example, a lot of people would think the higher end luxury market would have been more affected by it. So if I look at now the same period, the same area, so Oakville over the same period from basically the start of the pandemic in March 17th, and I look at over 2 million, we would have seen that right now during the pandemic there was a total of 28 sales. The previous 80 days before the pandemic, when the market was really at its peak, right, there was a total of 50 sales. Exactly the same percentage, 56%. So the markets, whether it's going to be a starter market or whether it's going to be a luxury market, pretty much been operating pretty much exactly the same. But what is interesting that a lot of people aren't telling you is this, the prices. I'm looking at properties that actually were listed previously, right, in November and December of last year that failed to sell. And I'll be specific. There was one at 2.2 million just around the corner for me that could not sell, and then listed during the pandemic and actually sold very close to list and sold within the first 2 weeks. How's that possible in the middle of a pandemic that this house is now setting a new precedent and selling when the market was much hotter, it didn't sell? We also saw another house that was listed for the very first time at a new precedent in terms of a list price, close to 2.5 million, and it sold within the first week and a half for just shy of asking price as well. So when you look at that data, that's very telling, because the prices have actually in some cases have gone up, and sometimes they've been even stabilized. But again, it's seeing things that would sell now that did not sell before. So you got to ask yourself, why is that happening? Now, I don't know, because I haven't spoken to each one of these 28 buyers on the high-end luxury market, nor the 450 some odd buyers that were in the entire market as a whole. But if I had to guess, I would say it's this: with everybody being quarantined at home and the possibility of them knowing that this is going to be more long-term and not traveling, their house is now their safe haven, and they're willing to spend more on their house to basically, because that's where they're going to be with the majority of the time with their families. Some people are now even working from home, so they need that extra space. Now, if they're not traveling, they're going to probably spend more time in their backyard, so they're going to want a bigger backyard with, you know what, a pool perhaps. So that's driving a lot of people to go out and actually take action and actually look for a newer home, or I say newer, a new home, a move, right? So that is something that, like I said, that is just now an opinion of mine, and it's an assumption. But I think it's important that the facts still remain the same, is that we are seeing these properties that are selling that hadn't sold before. So the other thing I'm going to say too is that this is pretty consistent also with the high-end like automobile market. So I have friends that are in the automobile market, and I talk to them and I'm like, hey, what are you seeing? And they're saying they're selling more supercars, cars that are over $200,000 now during the pandemic than they did before the pandemic. So there's a lot of consistency there. So either way, take that information however you want. If you do get questions as a result of it, feel free to reach out to us. We'll do our best to answer them. And like I said, if you want us to do a study in your particular neighborhood at your particular price point and so forth, we'd be happy to do that. So until next time, guys, take care.